of the future will provide a point-to-point infrastructure, a gateway to space, and encourage a focal point for the space economy. Conservative estimates see this space industry being worth $1.4 trillion by the end of the decade. To give you some context, this is about the current value of the gross national product of Australia. So we're talking conservative estimates being worth the same as Australia. These are conservative estimates. Some estimates see this figure going up as high as $10 to $14 trillion. We just saw the 14th spaceport licensed in the US, and many more states are in the process of building their spaceport. Our next guests know how to do just that. With a passion for space and their community, real estate experts with North Star Commercial Real Estate Advisors use their knowledge and their network to bring space to Arizona. They are co-founders of the Arizona Spaceport Alliance. Please welcome Karyn MacVean and Benjamin Hernandez. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello, Izzy.
So, how are things in Arizona?
Things in Arizona are going really well. The idea that we would be this far in the process this early is a little surprising.
One of the things that you guys do is the Arizona Spaceport Alliance. Can you tell me about it?
So the Arizona Spaceport Alliance started just over 5 years ago, and it was our notice that this sector was growing, and it was growing in such a way that traditional manufacturers and traditional partners in the aerospace world were poised to capitalize on something, but they needed particular pieces of infrastructure in place, right, in order to actually incorporate that into their own business structure. And noticing that some states had really started to position themselves, the question then became, Arizona has a lot of inherent opportunities with respect to accessing space. It just didn't have a conversation going with respect to who was going to lead the effort to build the infrastructure to grant access from the ground to space from Arizona. And at that point, it really became a why question. And in that why question, it sounded like the answers were because nobody really knew about the opportunity. So at that point, it becomes more of a marketing piece. It becomes more of a marketing question. Okay, how do we bring that knowledge base so that local leaders here understand what the opportunity is and what it means to workforce development and education in particular with respect to Arizona and its communities. It's a great way to capitalize on a very future-focused sector. And that means quality jobs and quality educational opportunities for any community that decides to give it its attention.
Can you tell me about the plans with the Arizona Spaceport Alliance and where you are in those plans at the moment?
Well, you know, the effort first began with what Karyn just mentioned, education, employment, really trying to get the idea across to politicians, community leaders, the aerospace industry, that Arizona was missing out on something. And so for the past 4 years, we have been focused on just that. In the last year, we applied for a federal designator, a C6, to support education and employment in the aerospace industry. And so we have shifted our focus into what's important to most people. Where are the jobs going? Where are they coming from? And who's going to be educating for those jobs? And workforce development is the top of mind of every industry. And so that's kind of where we shifted our focus, most specifically to manufacturing.
You had mentioned something about you applied for something. Can you expand on what that was?
But once we realized that Arizona is going to become a spaceport state, we got sites in the works, and there are different levels of development, and the industry is catching up, so to speak, with Arizona as Arizona tries to keep up with the industry. It's a weird discussion. As strong as Arizona is in aerospace, it's not very strong in space. So, you know, there's kind of this revolving discussion going on. But once we realized, okay, it's really moving forward, and the Global Spaceport Alliance is a part of that discussion, we decided when we applied for the federal nonprofit, the actual C6, we had to change the mission. It had to be a little bit more robust. It had to be a value add proposition from the smallest company to the universities and everyone in between. Karyn?
Yeah, no, I mean, just to capitalize on a little bit with respect to the discussion, the C6 designation really is our indication to the market that this isn't a profit generating center. This is truly a community building effort, right? And we want any member companies to have a voice heard and have their especially with respect to the workforce development issue, right? You want to have a platform and a group that understands. So when you're understands their challenges with respect to workforce development. So when you become a member of something like Arizona Spaceport Alliance, the nonprofit effort is really truly altruistic with respect to supporting spaceport development and those operators, those companies that are going to operate at a spaceport, and operate in and around the spaceport. This is a community effort to bring quality jobs and to keep graduates here, right? So they're not graduating from our local universities and then taking their talents to other places. They have opportunities here. And so as long as we have the ability to do that through the nonprofit, I feel like the community can grow inherently from that effort.
Well, I know that you do a lot of effort in the community itself. I've seen some of the marketing that you've done where you've shared things with Arizona State University, things that you have done to try to lift up the businesses in the area. Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
With respect to supporting the businesses themselves, it's really just providing sunshine on some of the issues that they specifically have, right? And if the university has a need or it has a skill set, right, that businesses can utilize, as long as it's like it exists. But if you don't know about it, if company A doesn't know about the talent or the equipment or something like that at the university, well, then you've got a missed opportunity there. So it's really about the bringing together of, the capability exists at the University of Arizona through their new space initiative, right? You can go utilize facilities here, and the nonprofit element just gives us a platform to make sure that the companies know about the capabilities of the university and the community. And the community and the university knows about the capabilities of each of these companies. Everybody does something very different here. And, one of my favorite statements is to reiterate is something out of Dr. Michael and Thomas's portfolio. There's space and space for everybody. We're gonna need talent from all of these pools. We, as our particular day job, are commercial real estate brokers. So we understand what happens on Earth, right? On that aspect, we understand that conversation. It's not something that's specific to the space industry, but it is an ancillary that level of knowledge is going to be needed, right? And if you can find it locally, it makes the conversation go a lot faster, and you can move further ahead if you can find it locally. So the nonprofit definitely allows us to be able to share that information, and then gives people a gateway to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, can you connect me with, right?
Well, and I want to kind of expand on the Arizona State University space program. You have worked with them to try to get this program started and going. That is a very important piece on getting a spaceport in your state, is working with the universities and the colleges in the area. So do you want to expand a little bit on how you developed that relationship?
To give you an example of how organic this has all been created, ASU started a new space initiative long ago. And between the two presidents, the former one and the current one, there was a bit of a bump, and it got shelved for a while. It got reignited at the time that I was attending ASU, and at the time that I was starting to be a little bit more familiar with aerospace issues in Arizona, just in general. And right about when I realized Arizona could be a spaceport state is when I started to reach out to the space programs at ASU. And the New Space Initiative was one of those programs that just seemed to fit with my narrative. As we stayed in contact, they started to reach out to us for certain connections. And it's just been one of those ideas that if the small companies can get involved with the universities, everyone prospers, because these graduates don't just go to the large companies, they go wherever they can find employment. And particularly in STEM fields, it's all over the place. There's space and space for everyone is not just idle talk. Every particular graduate has the ability to either work on autonomous vehicles or a satellite launching. It just doesn't matter. It's the same skill set. Yeah, ASU was at the forefront of that, and we just happened to piggyback right with them, and it's been a nice symbiotic relationship since then. And the same is true with U of A. It's amazing what U of A has done in the past. First of all, ASU and U of A are the most innovative schools in the world. It's crazy that we have them in Arizona, but that's just the way it's worked out. And they're both NASA heritage schools. They've worked with NASA for decades, and we just happen to be lucky enough to be right here with them. So they're both very active in new initiatives when it comes to these discussions: space debris, satellites, small satellites. They're at the forefront of all of this. And from the smallest lens to the largest lens, it's created of U of A. All the Mars rovers, everything having to do with Mars is an ASU initiative. It's just amazing the amount of collaboration between the two. By the way, this is one area where they're not really rivals. They're very collaborative. Together with Embry-Riddle, the Thunderbird School of Global Management, and the strong colleges and tech schools here in Arizona, we have a really nice pool of potential workforce development that's going to reach the next generation, for sure.
Which is why it's so important to have a spaceport, because that is the gateway to space. And we don't want any of that talent to have to go get jobs other places.
Yeah, the ability to stay within a state, no matter what governor you talk to, one of the key exporters of any state is their graduates. They always look for some greener pastures. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the spaceport is a box that we need to check. The launches will be a very small part of the overall aerospace development at any given location.
Now, when you do try to stand up a spaceport, communication is key with the community, with legislators, and other stakeholders. What kind of challenges have you encountered with communications and the marketing narrative with these particular groups?
We had to start and basically meet people where they were in their thought process, right? I remember one of the first comments was, "Are you talking like the Jetsons?" And I'm like, I had to really peel back into my memory to even remember the Jetsons, right? So understanding that, the audience was not, of course, keeping up with, what we are, and then finding an easy way to share this, right? To share this thought. And it's a good thing that aviation actually gives us a really good blueprint. At some point in the world, we all had to get used to the idea of the airport, right? And now look where we are with respect to that. And so, we've had some great opportunities, SpaceX and Blue and, Virgin have been wonderful in sharing some great marketing pieces that they've used and being able to point back to those. And even locally, Vector early on shared some great visuals, and those visuals are a key element to painting the picture of what this could be, right? This is not necessarily what it's going to look like, especially in the early stages, but and that just gives everybody the opportunity to stop and say, okay, yeah, you're right, we didn't always have airports, and now we do, right? And spaceport it's going to be different depending on where you are in the world and what sector you're serving too, because small satellite launch is going to look completely different than something like a SpaceX Florida Space Coast launch, right? Where we understand that that's not going to be a norm. And so really answering some of those questions for the community and bringing up that level of understanding so that they can participate in a meaningful way in the idea around the jobs element. Because that's when everybody gets comfortable with the thought of what this could be, then it's, how can I be involved? I can't tell you how many people are anxious to be an accountant for a space company, to be, an engineer, to be, involved in it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the rocket scientist. There are going to be a number of ways. And every time we get to find somebody who is involved in the sector, they are really excited to talk about the projects themselves. And it is one of the most, fascinating elements. It's a forward-thinking opportunity. It really gives families an opportunity to build legacy, to be able to work for Honeywell Aerospace and then move in or start their own business thereafter. We've seen a number of people do it, and we're really excited to find a way to support them while they look forward to building their own legacy that is incorporated into this whole thought and sector.
We touched a little bit before this program began about how fast things are moving. It is going at lightning speed. I mean, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we wouldn't have been having this type of conversation. So how have you seen it change over the last 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, it's not even 7 years, it's not even 6 years, it's 5 years, quite literally. I remember when I graduated. So this discussion.
Definitely. I remember the initial discussion around spaceport and everything. I was completely new to the thought 5 years ago, completely new to the thought, right? And I remember thinking, this is going to be like a 25-year project, right? Before we even see anything come of it, right? We're going to have to sit here and talk for a couple of decades on this topic, and hopefully we'll see something result from it. And I was absolutely elated at the fact that, our local community leaders got it right away. As soon as we were able to address some of the initial issues, and take it very seriously, right? Take their concerns very seriously and address them. And then after that, they were just like, okay, no, I see a future too. I see a future in this. And I see what you're talking about. I see the workforce development element. I see the educational opportunity. And we want, our kids to be able to find jobs here that they want to do, right? They want to be a part of. And we want to be able to start meeting like clean energy needs and, all the other elements that feed into this too, right? That are incorporated into the STEM type of a career path. I was so elated at the fact that there were people here in Arizona who are, because it is a collaborative environment, who had open minds and open hearts with respect to the discussion. And it's a testament to the state and to our communities here, how when we put it together and we really get on board with an idea how fast we can move things forward. Like I said, I would have told you easily 25 years. And now 5 years later, I'm like, we're hearing about the developments and the discussions around the state with respect to accessing space from Arizona. And it's a very robust and hearty conversation. I've got emails daily with respect to different little pieces that are moving forward. And it feels like the momentum, yes, the pandemic can certainly slow anything, but it slows it, it doesn't stop it. So now that, I feel like we're all getting used to the world as it is now, right? Now that momentum is picking back up again. Yeah, I feel like Arizona's got, the open mind to figure out a way to maximize an opportunity like a spaceport locally here.
And it's just a matter of also talking with people about their concerns. I have discovered that there's a huge disconnect between how we live our regular lives and how space influences every aspect of our lives. From the GPS that we look at on our phone for directions and traffic needs to weather, it all comes from space. Having that narrative with your community to begin with is part of the initial marketing part. And when I say marketing, I don't mean marketing as in sales. I mean marketing as communication and building relationships with an audience to help them see your vision.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
it's amazing that, we're literally discussing spaceports between here and the moon in cislunar space. These are not small ideas, and they're probably more economic in nature than anything else. But once they get the idea that most everything in space is going to be done on Earth, first and foremost, we have to get there first. Then they realize, well, who's going to be doing it? Well, it's going to be your kids that are going to be doing it, and it's not something new. It's just going to be reapplying that education that they got. The amount of people in space right now, including Karyn and I, that are doing jobs we never even envisioned we'd be doing is in every industry and every sector, including law, including accounting.
In about 10 or 20 years, where do you see space at, let's just go a little bit closer. Where do you see space by the end of the decade?
Yeah, for me, by the end of the decade, we're going to be on the threshold of making space travel as common as air travel. We're going to be right there we're going to be knocking on that door. We're already knocking on that door, but we're going to be really knocking on that door. And I think it's just a matter of time before those point-to-point flights happen routinely for the business class.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the point-to-point, and you're referring to the suborbital supersonic aircraft?
Definitely suborbital. Yeah, definitely suborbital. Supersonic and hypersonic, those are all three different discussions that we routinely have in the Global Spaceport Alliance. So yeah, we're well aware of the different industries and the different areas that aerospace will take and how space will contribute to that. But yeah, these are discussions that are very real, and companies are spending real money to try to answer those questions.
And just for our listeners, the suborbital transportation, point-to-point transportation that we're referring to has to do with new aircraft that are able to ride the orbit so high up that they're able to go anywhere in the world in about an hour and a half. It's going to change everything. And United, boom, NASA has one, Russia, China, they've already got them built. They're starting to come online. So this is a very near thing in the future.
If I can chime in with respect to what I hope will be at in terms of the new space sector and space and accessing space through spaceports, my hope is that we start to address some of the concerns that those alarms that were raised, particularly around space debris. And that element, right? I feel like this generation that's young right now really wants an opportunity to help more than anything else, and figuring out and finding ways to clean, to reverse damage. If you're talking about the reversing of damage here on Earth in particular, and you're talking about the blue origin story, right, with an idea of moving heavy industry, polluting industry off the planet. Hope is that the scientific community can really put some effort into figuring out the path for something like that, and see if we can start to reverse some of the problems that we're having right now with climate change in particular. So fingers crossed, and all the support going to those minds that are putting their heads toward solving problems that we know exist at this point, and want to find a way to reverse, because as wonderful of an idea as it is to start colonizing other places to a certain extent, because there's some conversation around that, we all do need to exist somewhere, and we want to make sure that we take care of it as much as we can, or start to help it recover if that's the need.
Well, that's one of the benefits to space as well, is that we're having to create ecosystems in order to move human beings from one place to the other in space without dying. So all that technology to how to clean air, how to clean the water, to off-gassing, keeping things clean inside this little ecosystem that we have to build, all that technology comes back down here to help us clean our world and get that back to being healthy. So that's one of my biggest, personally, that's one of my biggest whys on why I'm in this particular industry. So
right? We have a long history with respect to aviation here, in manufacturing in particular. And you know, no industry is going to not evolve. Every industry is, that's just the nature of it. You stay in business, it's by evolving. And so I feel like even, you know, on the government side and on the on that more technical you know, operational side, you really have to have somebody who's just like, well, let me investigate the stuff that sounds like it's out there and to see if it's got legs, right? If it's got the opportunity to grow. So everybody's going to have one, just like we have airports, right? Just like we have airports, everybody's going to have some.
It's not an either or.
Yeah. And you're right. It's not an either or.
It's a relationship. It's a relationship. Yeah. One of the biggest problems that I have or have had is trying to get Sky Harbor to understand that this isn't going to supplant their business model. It's going to
support it.
It's going to support it. If we can get flights from Australia to Mesa in less than 3 hours, then all of a sudden the flight from Sky Harbor to New York takes less time. And forget about getting to LA or San Francisco. It's the complementary use that we often talk about in real estate, you know, trying to get past that initial discussion. I'm telling you, the aviation industry, we have a lot of aviation events here in Arizona. And when I get into discussions with pilots that are right now doing, you know, the cutting edge dangerous maneuvers in these old planes or planes that they built themselves, you know, and are wholly unaware of everything going on in terms of spaceport development and what kind of vehicles they will have. These are the guys who are going to be daredeviling that stuff. And they're not even thinking about it. It's not even in their radar, you know? So it is amazing to me.
Yes. I mean, that's why I created that piece to begin with, was just to put it in their radar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And money talks. So I started off with money.
Yeah. Yeah. For us, it was, you know, you can do the workforce. Right. We can grow them. We can grow those kids. We know how to do it. They're coming up right now. So, you know, it's when you start to talk about the quality jobs, you know, that's the piece that grows your community. It certainly grows your taxpayer base. So. Yep.
It certainly does. So, but I'm getting ready to start a forum also in the state where I'm going to be moving across the state once a month to have just little.
Yeah, we do roundtables. Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
we do roundtables like that. So.
And how do you find them? I mean, how? Talk about that real quick.
It helps when a big university is backing it up. Yeah,
there you go.
It's like, true. Yeah, Stephen Fleming likes to start a lot of these with this phrase or some version of it. Nobody ignores the U of A email. You know, it's something that people respond to, and then when you realize what it is that he's talking about, the business of space as opposed to the science of space. There's plenty of people tackling the science. Where are these businesses going to make money and develop the workforce avenues? You know, what are these kids literally going to be doing?
So you guys have roundtables to bring everybody to the table and have discussions about this?
Yeah, Stephen monthly. Stephen, and I don't think he's with the University of Arizona, but he is also a huge advocate for the space community in terms of its entrepreneurial efforts. And so he had, gosh, how long ago? How many years now?
5 years ago. They always come back to 5 years.
It's true.
It's 5 years.
When he got here and he noticed that, you know, that these companies, the ones who were involved in space, all had very similar stories but they didn't know each other. Right. So he decided, okay, I have this platform. I have this opportunity at the U of A. Let's just see it. And it's not an expensive thing. It is really just if you come as you are, you know, the one is if you're in business and you participating or want to participate in space, right? Come and learn about some of the aspects. We've had some incredible speakers, and really just get to showcase the depth of knowledge here in Arizona, not only on that scientific, that academic stance, but on the doing the thing, on the business stance, right? The how do you stay in business when you're capitalized through, you know, equity and things like that, and venture capital, right? And what does that look like? And you know, what venture capitalists have a more patient timeline versus which ones are, you know, definitely wanting to see it within the next, you know, 5 years, because we know that it's going to take some time, you know, for some of these ideas to come to fruition. So you basically just learning best practices from other people who are still, you know, like staying alive and staying in business, and you getting contracts and figuring out a way to do that. I really feel like that's grown the sector, and a lot of companies come to when they come into Arizona, say from California or from Texas or wherever they're coming from, like come and sit, and you too can learn, right? How Arizona is different, right? Arizona, especially compared to some of the East Coast states, it is if company A has something that will help company B, chances are they'll figure out a way to do it together, because it is a collaborative environment here, business environment in general. You know, the roundtable is really just kind of a central point to be able to do that. So I'm so grateful that he puts it together. So like I said, it's an easy way. There's coffee, there's cookies, and a place to talk. So
What more do you need? And
what more do you need?
It's an exciting time because it's so new. And by that, I mean the startups are everywhere. The companies needing to adjust from aerospace to space, or at least thinking about that, they're everywhere, but they don't know it yet. They don't know who's developing the bolts for Virgin Galactic. You know, they don't know who's providing the fabric for those seats. You know, there's this kind of idea that if you weren't already in the know, you're kind of behind the ball. And that might be true to some degree, but it's just a growing industry. It is going to be in the trillions. What's really beneficial is the companies that are exploring what it is that space is going to mean to their industry. That's really exciting.
That's where you really start to see the ideas, the actionable ideas come out, right?
Yeah,
Well,
they can move faster.
They can move faster.
well, and at this point, the majority of what's in space is new.
Oh yeah.
You know, you have your big players, but the majority of what's in space, I mean, 5 years ago, we did not have 70 countries that had space programs.
Yeah.
So the majority, it's
So true.
almost everybody is at that level playing field. You know, there's just the few that have gone forth before and plowed the way, but what is happening now is all new.
Yeah, if we want to talk about societal impacts, the laws and the insurance policies haven't been drafted yet. That's how new this is. You know, one of the hurdles that we were particularly proud of is that Arizona passed through legislation that allows a limited liability level for companies looking at space projects in Arizona. That's a major hurdle for every state, and I would imagine every country, but every state that's wanting to attract that new business. If you can't protect the companies from taking that risk, then less of them are going to take that risk. And so, yeah, it happened, like I said, that happened within 3 years. So our efforts were almost immediately influential and forward progressing. It was nice to see that happening. A lot of these, unbeknownst to us, we started a conversation and those people took off with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It really happened that way, you know?
Yeah, well, it certainly galvanized a lot of efforts that were already happening too. And we have some real forward-thinking people. We're lucky. We're lucky. You know, just being here in the U.S. in particular, there's just the open mind policy, right? To give it a go and give it a shot and continue. And words don't cost anything right now, and that kind of thing, right? It allows people really the opportunity to explore without and put some effort and time, and just like we're doing right now, right? I mean, this is our full-time jobs, but we leave here and we've shared something that is then shared with others, and all of a sudden, you hear so and so heard you and they're calling in from South Korea or something like that. This communication and the dialogue is so important. It's so important. So
it is key. It is very key.
Future will reflect kindly on this effort,
Yeah.
right? It's coming. Like there's in my heart of hearts, I know that this is where it's going, right? I don't see the world exploding. I don't see, a fall backward in terms of technology. I don't see any of that. I really feel like, no, our kids are going to be learning things and taking care of things in a different, and having a different perspective, something that we didn't grow up with necessarily. So it's here. And at this point, it's how do we answer the little questions? How do we answer the little paths forward? Like, how do we start the high school programs? How do we, for me, I'm doing the Girl Scouts. I'm helping with the initiative called Girls Can Build, right? And it is an after school, because the Girl Scouts is not a part of a school curriculum. It is a voluntary effort to figure out a way to make sure girls get their hands on tools, right? Tools that help them, engage in engineering and design, all things that you need more minds on, right? And you need more perspectives. You need the perspective of women in engineering as much as you need the perspective of men in engineering. Just look at what they're doing with the spacesuit and how they're having to redesign it right now, right?
Yes.
It was designed for a prototypical person. And now they have to go back in and rethink that. So, and they have to take into consider the fact that the Artemis program is going to have women involved in it, which means the suits need to, change and evolve, right? Industry needs to evolve, the equipment needs to evolve. Evolution is where it's at. That's the thing that you can really hang your hat on.
Well, the exciting thing about space now is that for 50 years, we've watched Congress dictate whether or not the space program existed. And now, with all these other countries starting it, it doesn't matter what our Congress does. That genie's already out of the bottle. It's either lead the pack or get out of the way.
Yeah.
And
Congress and conflict.
And, one of the things before I let you both go that really resonated with me, I was talking with somebody who's in the academic side of the conversation. And she was very much so indicating that, academia is sometimes feels taken advantage of by business, and in terms of utilizing their work for profit, that type of thing. But my argument to her was, listen, you need us to figure out a way to make the growth of that work into something that's a profit center so it continues. Otherwise, it just gets, dropped in a history book and we're referring to it later just in reference, right? You want its growth to be something that can be capitalized on to a certain extent. And I get it that, there's a consciousness level that needs to be incorporated. And there are those who are really putting their efforts in making sure that happens. But then if you're able to make that transition successfully, you can then go focus on something even further out, right? You can grow as an academic professional, taking that knowledge base and building off of it and focusing on something else. You can hand it off, just like, the U.S. government and these governments are handing off operating in low Earth orbit, right? Now the industry can do the math, figure it out, do the pro forma, seeing what's possible there. And, now these agencies can go out and do something further out. So, it can work in a growth and symbiotic way.
And a lot of businesses are going to come up with solutions that maybe you didn't think of, that, it will correct itself.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of people, I believe, are good and they want good outcomes. And it will correct itself if there's a bad actor in there.
Yeah. I agree.
You need the like I said, the medium and small companies to engage with the universities and the schools, even though they don't feel they have a role. And quite frankly, they don't have time. They have to stay in business. It's a really tough thing to stay in business. But these universities approach it from a very simple perspective. Do you, company A, have a science problem that we can help you with? You don't have the time, ability, resources to do this. There's a reason why Raytheon and Honeywell engage with universities and Avnet and all, because the university has the resources to put behind that effort. you can be a small to medium-sized company and get the same outcome, get the same reward, pay attention to the contracts, pay attention to the patents that are developed, but engage, be a master of your own destiny with regards to what it is that you want to accomplish for your company. That's it.
And partner with who's out there.
And partner, yeah.
You're not in it alone.
Yeah, there are organizations for these small manufacturers. Do it through that organization. They got they have the infrastructure somewhat in place. You just need to figure out who that end goal partner is going to be. Yeah. Tech schools are perfect for that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Great resources for that. So,
well, as always, it is a pleasure to watch you guys. LinkedIn, I'm constantly reading your stuff, by the way.
Oh, good.
Reading Karyn's stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, you had some really, and that one particular thing that you shared from ASU, I have gone over that. I have watched it again and again. I've watched it a couple of times because it's just chock full of really good stuff.
We're actually in fact, I was just emailing just before this, we're putting together yet another type workshop, like mini to a certain extent, on state engagement with respect to the idea. So look for that to come soon. That's coming soon.
Yeah, that's a good point. When it comes to, we love the way that event came together, and there was a specific purpose for my outlook, and it was a home run for me. It was a home run for me. Yeah. And we're hoping that this next chapter of that particular event is really, really fruitful. Yeah.
It's poised to be very fruitful. So
what advice do you have for other countries, areas, states, as they begin their spaceport infrastructure journey?
Be honest with what you've got and be honest with what you can work with. And that's in all sectors. I mean, this idea that local politics controls the narrative is very real. You just can't be changing things so dramatically because you're trying to force fit something. There's an ability to create educational spaceports that have nothing to do with launches, but have everything to do with providing the workforce that's going to be needed. You don't need permission to go to space to do that, but it's got a real role to play. Environmental concerns, this idea that we have to change the environment in any dramatic way is really, it's not necessary. We can work with existing airports to accomplish things without having to change what's already been changed by the presence of the airport. Honest discussions is probably the biggest advice that I can give. It's easy for the momentum to push you beyond what you should be pushing beyond. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it.
Well, that's definitely the case. And I would say also, listen to your community. If your community has a natural effort and has a natural energy toward meeting some aspect, I mean, the aerospace sector and the space sector has a lot of potential and a lot of opportunity. So if your particular area has a want and wish and you can galvanize that energy, that's a great place to start. It's a nice organic way to start, and you'll see a lot of participation if you can come from, a set of schools, or a set of scientists, or a set of somebody who can also support you while you put the numbers together to test the realities of participation in the sector. So I feel like it all becomes a math problem at some point. Right. So if you're honest about your discussion and you have a natural energy towards something, then you can put the numbers together to help support it and then move the conversation forward. It makes it a lot easier.
Well, and that goes hand in hand with listening to your audience. That is so key in any type of initiative like this or any other marketing initiative, is to listen to your audience and give them feedback. Listen first, but then move forward with what you're going to do. It resonates a lot better with them. Do you have any particular address or website that you would like people to go to? Would you like to have more participation with the Arizona Spaceport Alliance? kind of touch on that. Do your
Absolutely.
call to action.
Yeah, so anybody can reach us at azspaceport.org. You can always type a message through the contact us tab, and we get messages on there frequently, and always happy to discuss, always happy to connect, always happy to help answer a question or point somebody in the right direction. So it's just a natural part of what we do. And we're always happy to help connect anybody with respect to Arizona and participating in the effort here as well. Those conversations are ongoing. And if anybody wants to be plugged in with respect to Arizona and its capabilities, it's a great place to do business. It's certainly one of my favorites, that's for sure. And so you're welcome to reach out to us through the website. And like I said, we're always happy to help further the conversation.
Yeah. There are very few places in the world that have the security of the United States and the access to the skies that Arizona has and that space will need. And we're an excellent portal to start, investigating how you can collaborate with Arizona in that regard.
It does sound like you have the school support as well for space.
Yeah, the workforce development.
Yes.
Yeah. A couple of the best schools in the world. So we're really lucky here.
Well, awesome. Okay. So I think that's a good way to end it. And they're intense, aren't they?
Yes. Yes. Thanks so much, Izzy. Really appreciate it. It's been a fun conversation.
Please subscribe before you head on over to my YouTube channel for bonus footage. Links to YouTube and other social media channels can be found on spacemarketingpodcast.com. A special thanks to Karyn MacVean and Ben Hernandez from Arizona Spaceport Alliance for joining us today and sharing their experience with building a spaceport and a space economy in Arizona. Be sure to check out their links listed in today's notes. Join us next week as we speak with Gary Punsek, CEO of Strata Dynamics, with their UAV flights to near space. I hope that you found this podcast useful for your journey as you reach for the stars.